So Vashti, thank you so much for joining me on the Teachers Podcast.
Oh, thank you for inviting me along.
No, it's brilliant. So obviously we're at the One Education Literacy Conference. You've just done your keynote. It was amazing.
Thank you.
There was such a fan crowd in there as well, especially before you arrived, which you probably didn't realise. But yeah, they absolutely love your books. It's new, it's exciting, and thank you. I think I'm really excited what the teachers are going to get out from listening to this podcast episode. But I think they're going to be really excited that you particularly are on it. So thank you.
Oh, that's lovely. I must admit, I'm really lucky to have such brilliant teacher support. And it's lovely. I think in this day of social media, like it breaks down the barriers, so it makes it a lot easier to kind of connect with people and see what they're doing in the classroom and everything.
It does. And I really like that. And one thing that I always say is, do you know what? We're accessible in a way that we've never been accessible before, and you have to embrace that. And if you embrace that, then you get something really good out of it.
Yeah, you do. And I think sometimes I think of it a bit like a triangle. So you've got like the authors, you've got the teachers, and you've got the children. So the children sort of through the teachers can maybe, send us things, show us work, celebrate it, and ask questions and that sort of thing. So it's a nice bridge between it.
And I think there was a time when people would have thought that an author wouldn't want that, like they wouldn't want that in their lives. But I think social media makes it so much easier to actually do that, to get authors into your school. And
yeah, it does.
Yeah. Oh, brilliant. Thank you. So, obviously you're an author, but I thought it'd be really helpful if you could give us a backstory, like, how you got into what you're doing now. Yeah.
So I've always written ever since I was young. I had ups and downs of kind of believing I could do it, and as we all do on these kind of journeys, especially creative careers. But so I've done lots of other things as well. One of the things that I have done is be a teacher in primary school. So I did tend to, when I was a teacher though, everything that I did, I would weave story into it somehow. Because it's like my first love of in life. In teaching, I would always find ways to bring books into the learning, and story time was always the most important time of the day for me.
Do you think it was? Do you think that because you was such a lover of story, that like literacy was your sort of favourite thing to teach?
Yes, I would say so. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think being the lovely thing about working in primary school is it's much easier to go between subjects. You don't necessarily have to box it into literacy or geography or whatever. You can merge it in a lovely way, which you can't necessarily do so easily in secondary school. So it's a great place to use story, because story kind of naturally bridges those. To
merge the curriculum. And your stories in particular really sort of lend themselves to, splashing over the curriculum and covering all those different subjects as well, don't they?
For some reason, it just sort of serendipitously happened that way, that it's, that especially Brightstorm has been used in all these amazing ways by teachers. It's been a real joy to see it over the last kind of year and a half or so.
So you've mentioned teaching, but you've not just done teaching.
No.
What do you do now?
Oh, so I work in marketing now, because basically teaching and writing is very difficult to do together, because I know the demands that teachers are under. You do tend to take your work home, and it's difficult to leave it in the classroom. I mean, some teachers are very good at that, but it's not easy.
I don't think there's a very many that could do both.
No,
at all.
It's I just knew that if I wanted to take my writing seriously, that it would be difficult to do with teaching. Not impossible, but for me, I thought, do you know what, I'm going to maybe step out, work in a job that I can leave in the office, and so my time that I'm writing is mentally I'm there.
But still, then you're a published author, but yet you still have a full-time job, which is just that's epic. I'm sure there are people listening now going, wait, what?
It's really hard. Actually, I did cut down to 4 days last year, so it's a little bit easier.
4 days is practically a full-time job.
Yeah, it's still. I mean, hopefully, I'm hoping I can cut down a bit more next year. But it's, life can be quite expensive, as we all know, to kind of keep, I've got 3 children, and it's tricky. So I do have to juggle both. But, I'm really lucky that the books have been embraced and it's all going well. Scholastic, my publisher, are really supportive. So, things keep moving onwards and upwards, which is wonderful. And I adore what I do. Yeah. I adore being an author. I love doing school visits. I love writing. It sort of brings together all my interests. At school, I was one of these children that was good at everything, but didn't particularly excel in any one thing. But I loved science, art, English, the whole lot. So being a writer, I get to put everything into what I do, which is a perfect job for me, really. Yeah,
that's amazing. I mean, I think just listening to you, it's a perfect example of somebody who wants something and will do whatever it takes to be successful. And you have to sometimes do that extra job, and you have to just focus on that and kind of just take the rough, don't you, to get to that point where it's a bit smoother. You do, and actually I kind of like the sort of characters that I write in my book. I didn't realise till after I'd written them that, these kind of bold, tenacious characters that batter down barriers and find ways through and, go on these up and down journeys. And I thought, when I got to the end of writing, I thought, God, this is a bit like life as a writer, and what you have to, these sort of skills are, I thought, I've kind of written my writing journey here, being tenacious and things going wrong, but kind of carrying on regardless and getting through it. And those skills can relate to anything that you try and achieve in life. So it's a rough road, but, I'm quite a positive person. And I've always focused on trying to write the best stories I can. Not on the sort of the goal of being published, but I've always thought if I can write good stories, then I stand the best chance I can at being published. But that's what I focus on: is am I writing something that's the best I can possibly write? And it's not just about being published either. It's about children really remembering those stories. You've talked in your keynote about authors you remembered as a child, and imagine 20 years time, and there's somebody up there as a teacher talking about you. Yeah, that would be incredible, absolutely amazing. I'm so touched when I get messages via teachers about children that have maybe read Brightstorm or WildSpark, and it's really meant something to them, because I know what that feels like. I remember what it feels like. When I was growing up, my parents didn't really read to us at home. So having teachers read stories was everything to me. Going to a primary school where story was valued highly, our head teacher would read my naughty little sister stories, and every single assembly time she would sit down and read us a story. And what more, that's the way to bring up the level of the value of story, isn't it? To have your head teacher sit down and take that time to read a story to you. And it put story at the heart of everything, and it opened up a new world for me. Really, that's amazing. So how did you actually get published then? So I just when I in my sort of 20s, and I'd always gone through stages of not believing that I could do it, or it was something that someone like me, ordinary me, could possibly do. Actually, that's another reason why it's important to do author visits and to break down those barriers, because children need to see that it's something that is achievable if you're tenacious enough, you work hard enough, and if you want it enough. It's important to see that you can break down those barriers, and ordinary people can achieve extraordinary things. That we're not some magic person with a golden pen that it goes right. We do edit, we do draft, we do get it wrong, and we do work hard. And knowing that is, I think, really important for children. So being on that journey and meeting children and being able to sort of talk about that is important. So how did you get published? Oh yeah, that was your question, wasn't it? Sorry, I knew I'd gone off on a tangent. I did do that. I'm sorry. Bring me back in. So do I. I was like, I best read what the question was.
So I was writing my 20s, went on lots of writing courses. So I've got to collect my toolkit and get good at what I do. So did my teaching as well in between. After my teaching, I did an MA in creative writing. And after that, I was still teaching, and then I kept writing alongside teaching, kept doing courses, and eventually I joined something called the Golden Egg Academy. So if there's any teachers that fancy a bit of writing, this is a great place to go. It's run by children's book editors from the industry. A brilliant lady called Imogen Cooper, who worked for Barry Cunningham, who famously discovered J.K. Rowling back in the day. He has his own publishing house, Chicken House. And Imogen worked for Barry. She was seeing lots of stories come through that she thought, if only I had more time, these show so much promise. If I could help these writers on their journey, then there could be some amazing stories to be had. So she started this thing called Golden Egg Academy, where you can get this brilliant advice from industry editors, develop your skills in a very nurturing and friendly environment, and that's how I kind of then met my agent through Imogen, and sort of it propelled me onto the next level, I suppose. Got an agent and eventually got my book deal with Scholastic.
Exciting. So what books have you got coming up?
So Dark Whispers is my next book, which is out in February, a follow-on from Brightstorm. So back with the crew, back on an expedition. So at the end of Brightstorm, it finishes with a missing explorer. They're just sitting around at the end, and they're reading the paper and this missing explorer. And they sort of decide to go in search of this missing explorer. And that's what Dark Whispers is about. But I've had enough of the cold in Brightstorm, so I was like, let's go tropical. We're going to the rainforest.
Oh, wow.
With a really big twist in the tale.
Oh, exciting.
And some new creatures, some new sapient creatures. And
so you're still writing that now?
No, it's done. Just copy edits, which is the final stage of all the little tiny bits of punctuation and repetition and things like that to sort out. And
do you feel like you have to get it to a certain standard in terms of the punctuation, or do you kind of just go, somebody else can sort it out?
I try as much as I can to get it right, but there's still things that you miss. I think as a writer, it's like being a juggler. You're juggling like 1,000 balls at the same time in your story, and you can't sort of you won't see everything. No. And actually, even when it's gone through maybe 3-4 different people, there are still things that get missed or don't get spotted. Actually, that's a really important thing for children to know, that everyone makes mistakes, no one gets it perfect. It's a team that works on a book. It's not all about one person, and it's okay to have other people look at your writing and to edit and to do these things. And it's okay if you're not great at spelling and grammar. There's there are ways of learning, and there's help, and there's so much more that goes into being a writer.
And do you know what? It's really easy to miss things, especially when you've done it yourself. Because obviously we do proofreading at Classroom Secrets, and things do get missed. And honestly, we've tried it where you check your own work. It's just impossible to spot it. Things sort of slip through. And because of that, now I definitely spot errors in books. And I'm like, hang on a minute, that's an error.
They're there to be had, and I think that's okay. It shows that we're all human. And
this is it,
and
and it's a normal thing, isn't it? I think people think that everything's perfect, and nothing is perfect.
No.
Okay. So when you're writing your books then, do you have a specific kind of reading level in mind, or do you just write and you tend to have it kind of just comes naturally?
I just write. I just write in the way that I write, and I don't sort of think too much about if a word is right for the situation, then I'll use that word. And often I'll try and challenge myself by using a word that maybe I don't use often in conversational language. If it's right for the description or it's right for the character, I thought, no, that's a great word to use. So I don't I'm not doing it sort of on purpose necessarily, but I think language is a beautiful thing to explore. So I explore it in my own way, and I don't sort of shy away from using language that is, it might be a bit new or different, because I think teachers love to, children love to explore new words. And,
yes. It's
and
a good
add
learning
to
opportunity
their,
for teachers, and I suppose that's another reason why it's great to get your books in the lessons so that they can sort of explore that new vocabulary as well.
Yeah.
So obviously you've been a teacher before. What of your teaching knowledge do you bring into your books, do you think?
I think I bring that, I suppose, that understanding of the magic of stories in school and how important that is, and what a brilliant space it can be for learning. Even though I don't write with that in mind, I think probably in my subconscious these things come in perhaps, but knowing about how important the joy of books can be and what a difference it can make when children discover the book that turns them into readers and turns them into that kind of lights that touch paper, lights the spark. Knowing how important that is everything. Yeah,
and I think you must just have in the back of your mind somewhere, it's just that understanding, like you say, of where the children are at. So do you have any tips for encouraging reading for pleasure in schools then?
Yeah, I would, from the schools that I visit, I know that the teachers that are, embrace children's books themselves and love children's books and are knowledgeable about what's out there, the children in those classes are much more likely to be switched on about reading for pleasure, because they can, there's a buzz in the classroom. The teachers might have their own, shelf of books that they recommend that the children can borrow. They might have recommended reads. And then I always think of it as like ripples in a pond, when you drop a pebble and it ripples out. So like that teacher is like the pebble, and then the children are the ripples, and then the children start recommending to each other, and there's just a buzz about reading. And I think that's what you want to try and build, that culture of reading for pleasure. Another thing that I would say that I did when I was a teacher is, if you can try and I did this with year 6. The first half term we did a topic on picture books, and sometimes people can think of, there's some hierarchy in the order, like that picture books, like you can't read those when you're in year 6. But I went straight in with some great quality picture books, and we talked about how sophisticated they can be, and they are, and how important, and try to elevate that up. And then that helps the children that maybe struggle with reading. It elevates it so that they can access that. Yeah.
So do you ever link your books to topics then? Obviously being a teacher, you know what all the different topics are. Do you ever link them to history or anything like that?
Yeah, I don't, never on purpose. I mean, I think I wrote Brightstorm because I love real life stories of explorers and adventurers, and the idea came from seeing Shackleton's advert for one of his expeditions, and I thought, what a great start for a story, what a great call to adventure. What if 2 children answered an advert like that? And then Arthur and Maudie sort of arrived, and I went from there. But then kind of explorers is often a topic that might be used in primary school, but that wasn't me thinking, oh, they do explorers, so I'm going to write a book about explorers, because then I think you lose the magic a little bit. Like you can't sort of fit. It has to just come together in a more, I don't know, in a more organic.
It needs to be something you buy into as well, doesn't it?
Yeah, so it's lovely that those connections are there, but it's not something that I purposefully sort of thought of. It's just lovely that it happens to have been that way. Of
course, yeah. So obviously you've mentioned that you're working in marketing now. Do you feel like that helps you market your book?
A little bit, yeah. I think like with I work with content management on websites and things, so I'm quite with my own website. I find it quite easy to navigate and create, which is helpful, and like social media and things like that as things I do for my job. So it's kind of it's not an alien space for me.
No, and you've got quite a unique position really from the teaching side and the marketing side. You're probably very like me. I have to do both those things as well. So obviously you do lots of school visits and you've talked to lots of teachers. So somebody's listening now and they're using Brightstorm, for example. What ideas have you got for teachers to use your books in the classroom?
Oh, I've seen some amazing thing that teachers have done, really creative activities. So maybe like I'll use literacy as an example to start off with, because that's the most obvious link to from story. But things like with in Brightstorm, the twins apply to go on this expedition. So I've seen some great persuasive letters from children applying to Captain Harriet Culpeper as to why they should be accepted for this mission. And I think that's very motivating, because if you use story to do this, because they're already part of the story, they're immersed in it. So I like to think of them travelling along with the characters on these expeditions. So, that's so motivating as a child, isn't it? To like, if you already feel like you're like with Arthur and Maudie, to then write a letter because you want to proceed with them, you want to go on this adventure, is highly motivating. So some lovely letter writing, newspaper reports that relate to the story about what's happening, and diary writing are all things that I've seen that have worked really well in literacy. Loads of brilliant DT and ICT work, so creating skyships, some really sophisticated, amazing skyships that I've seen, and work with computers as well. A lovely activity that I saw, and this could be used for any story that you use. A teacher from Brockwell School had some steampunk type of goggles, and the children drew as if looking through the characters' eyes, drew a scene from the book. And I thought, well, lovely idea. You could use that for any story that you're reading. And it gives you something on the empathy side, because you're inhabiting a character and imagining what it's like to look through their eyes and see the world. So you could bring in, emotions in the colours that they use to draw what the character's seeing. But I thought that's a very translatable idea. So many great ideas. And you also, in your keynote, I was listening, you mentioned about Pinterest. Oh yeah, I'm really I'm quite a visual learner, I think. So I use images a lot when I'm describing. Often if I'm writing a scene, I'll have a picture right beside me to help me create the space that I'm describing. I have a Pinterest board for Brightstorm. So if anyone is reading Brightstorm, they can look it up, just put in Vashti Hardy Brightstorm, and you'll find all the pictures that I used to help create the world. But you could create a class Pinterest board and start collecting pictures for an idea, maybe for a class story, or just pictures that you find interesting. And then you can print the pictures out, maybe use them to do some free writing. So have a collection of interesting pictures. And sometimes when I do school visits and children, they might be creating their own maps of a world, I take around a group of my own pictures and will say, just take a couple that you find interesting, put them together and see what you can create, if it sparks an idea for a story or anything. So pictures are great to use. I love that idea. I love that. I feel like I need to go find your your board and just analyse where all these ideas came from. I think that's a really lovely activity. Yeah, it helps me create the atmosphere of a world for me, and that's really important to sort of get the feeling. Right. Yeah, and we talk about imagination, don't we? And we say that children have a good imagination, but I actually did a podcast with John Murray not too long ago, and he was talking about sometimes children need that extra help developing their imaginations. And I think, sometimes we struggle to see what it would look like, but if you can see it visually and then create it from there, really you're developing that skill as well, aren't you? Because you start flipping it on its head. It can be very hard to go from just nothing to something. Yeah. So all the things that you can use, so images, music, if you use soundtracks to films, are brilliant for this, because they tell an emotional story, they tell a journey. So, maybe try, if you're a teacher, one day just put on some music from the soundtrack to Harry Potter or something,
Yeah.
and let the children do some free
that.
writing. It doesn't mean you'll start writing Harry Potter stories. You'll start
thinking of things. Absolutely, you do. And I think for me, you're just saying that, I'm thinking of times I've listened to, say, the Harry Potter soundtrack, and you can't help yourself. You just feel things.
Yeah.
And how could you not put that into something creative?
Yeah, you could. Yeah, it would be lovely to do in school. I tell you something else, like another little idea that I use. So Dark Whispers is set in the rainforest. I've never been to the rainforest. I can't afford to jet off to the rainforest, sadly. I would love to, but I can't. So I want to write it authentically. So how do I do that? So I watch a lot of nature programs. David Attenborough, Bear Grylls is a real favourite in my house, because you can find out how to put the characters into these dangerous situations, how to get them out, and you can sort of build that environment. And BBC have a great archive of sounds that are free to download. I think it's BBC Sound Archive. So go in there, you can type in rainforest sounds, and then you can just listen to what it sounds like to be in the rainforest, to what the cacophony, the orchestra of all the different noises, the croaks and the squawks and the chirps and all these things that go on. You could do that in class, like try some different sounds and get the children to describe what they're hearing and put that into their stories then. Yeah. But that's a great resource. You might not be able to travel there, but you can. We've got technology that can take us these places.
And it's so interesting listening to you talk, because I feel some comparisons really with when I interviewed Tom Palmer, and sometimes I think we expect children to sit down and write from nothing, yet you're here, a published author, telling me it doesn't come from nothing.
Yeah.
It comes from inspiration, in sound, in pictures. It comes from somewhere, and if we as adults need that, then what are we scaffolding for the children to make sure that they have that for their inspiration?
Yeah, absolutely.
It's such a good point. So there might be some people listening who have never read Brightstorm and never read any of your books. Just describe what they're like.
So they're adventure stories, primarily, and adventure fantasy stories. I tend to have like a little bit of a science or invention element to it, because I love science, and I tend to create worlds where I imagine that there's never been a gender sort of barrier to achievement or anything like that. So you get a very even mix of girls and boys sort of in the variety of roles. Hopefully they appeal quite well to both girls and boys, which is lovely. I have a very even mix of audience, which I love. So they're adventure fantasies, with often with interesting creatures in. So in Brightstorm, there are these creatures called the thought wolves who communicate through their thoughts with the characters. And I love imagining sort of what if. So I'm fascinated by how humans sort of maybe place themselves in the world, how we view other animals. And I like imagining what if there were some animals that were as intelligent, more intelligent than us. What would that world be like? And yeah, I tend to just ask big questions in my book and just kind of explore it through the story.
I'm just thinking about your stories. I mean, can you imagine them being made into a film?
Oh, I'd love that. I'd so love that. I think they'd probably be quite expensive to make, with flying ships. Mind you, yes. CGI, we're
well,
fine.
This is it. I'm thinking, recent ones, but it'd be brilliant.
Oh, I think
really
it would.
Good.
Thank you.
Right. Would you ever go back into teaching?
I wouldn't. No, I don't. No, I wouldn't. Just because I feel like I've got the best job in the world being an author, and I love it so very much. And getting to go into schools and see children, I kind of get all the best bits of being a teacher, and kind of, that thing that I loved about it. I still get a little bit of that by being an author and going in and seeing, meeting children and meeting readers and teachers. But teaching is a hard job, an amazing job, an amazingly satisfying job. I think it's like equally like writing is very satisfying, and being a teacher can be very satisfying and hard. But often the best things in life are hard work.
Yes, that's true. That's true. So Classroom Secrets is running a life work balance campaign. We're really passionate, me in particular, about making sure that teachers can have a life work balance by giving them the opportunity to, rather than just saying, well, look after your life work balance, because that doesn't solve any problems. If you could wave a magic wand to solve the life work balance problem, what would you do?
Oh gosh, do you know, if I can wave a magic wand, this would work for me anyway. I would have, you know, the Hermione time twister.
I was thinking, when you started, I thought this is going to be like some fantasy thing.
Yeah,
this is going to be the best answer ever. Go.
The amount of times, honestly, I thought I would love a Hermione time twister, because you know, there's not enough hours in the day for everything, and there's so many wonderful things to do. Like for me, there's so many great stories to write, there's so many wonderful, and for teachers, there's so many great things you can do in the classroom with kids, and it's just like there's often not enough time, or we're going too fast through things. And sometimes I wish, especially for teachers, I wish that a lot of the kind of the box ticking could just disappear, and there would be more space for some free, you know, the blue sky thought, and that could be elevated and valued, and, you know, given some space.
I love that I've asked you that question. I was just as I started to ask you, I just thought, I'm going to get an amazing answer here. Time twister.
Yeah, it had to have a magical answer.
Yeah, a magical answer. That's amazing. I'm going to petition the government for that.
Yeah, I think so. This should happen.
I asked you if you couldn't wave a magic wand.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, you chose magic.
Did,
that was correct. Who was your favourite teacher at school and why?
Oh, I had a teacher, Mr. Dunham, at secondary school, who gave us writing journals, free writing journals, to write whatever we wanted it in, and they wouldn't ever be marked. And I took a journal and I started writing. And without him, I don't think I'd be a writer. So he was great. Also, Mrs. Arnold, the teacher that read Rebecca's World when I was in year 2. Again, without that book, I don't think I'd be a writer. It was the book that changed everything for me and opened my mind to, you know, that's the moment I realised, actually, your imagination is like a superpower. This is like pretty amazing tool we have.
It is amazing. And do you know what I find amazing is when adults retain their childhood imagination for children's books, because there's been times when I feel like the crack has opened again slightly, and I'm like, oh my word, where did it go?
Yeah.
I remember what it was like having it, and it's gone.
Yeah.
But I'm glad you've kept it, because I often do think, like, how do people hold on to this? And I think that's an amazing skill.
I think it's important too. I don't know how you do it, but I don't know. I suppose I've always been a really imaginative person, and I can't help but just
keep that imagination flowing. Who is your inspiration within education?
Within education. Oh, so I've got to say Teacher Glitter on Twitter, who a lot of people will know. If you follow her, you can look back through her timeline. She's done some amazing Brightstorm work in the classroom. She's one of the first teachers to embrace it, and I love her creativity and her energy and passion for what she does. It's like a really beautiful thing. So she's very, I mean, there's so many teachers that inspire me, actually, that I come across, and you know, it's amazing how you can make friends with people through like social media, through Twitter or Instagram, and how you can connect. And I love the way that it bridges that gap, and you can make friends in that way.
You can, okay, last question then. What did you want to be when you grew up?
When I was younger, I a writer, but it doesn't mean that I always believed I could do it. You know, wanting to do something and believing you can do something are two different things, and that can be quite a journey, and that, you know, the self-doubt that can creep in, and sort of, you know, feeling like you're someone ordinary that maybe can't do that, but then that's a life skill, isn't it? Kind of that journey through learning how to overcome that and have self-belief and have tenacity and positivity and bash down the barriers and find a way, you know, and knowing with enough hard work and enough, enough get your blinkers on and go for that goal that you can do it. I always thought with writing, if I got to the end of my life, what would I regret? And I thought I would regret not trying.
Yeah.
Failing, that's a different thing. If you fail, if you've given it everything and you fail, at least you've tried your best. So I always knew I would regret not trying. So I thought, I'm going to really try.
Yeah, and I think in the creative kind of careers, it's really hard, and you really do have to believe in yourself when sometimes nobody else does. And I think it's more than a life skill. And I think what's a shame is that quite a lot of people don't actually know how to get over that. Yeah. And you have to be in a special place with yourself, I think, to believe in yourself, to do that, because with the creative things like being an actor or a singer or a writer, it's something different, and you're very much judged, aren't you, on what you've produced? Yeah,
it's very tricky, and that's where someone like a teacher, a friend, a parent, a sibling, a friend, they can make all the difference. If you've got one person that at the right time will say to you, you can do this, it's okay, this is good what you're doing. No, you have got something here in your writing or your story or your whatever it is you're pursuing. Sometimes we all need that little pat on the back, don't we, in order to kind of go, okay, no, right, onwards.
Who was that person for you?
I think with the writing, it was probably Imogen at Golden Egg Academy, because she was an industry editor, and because she read my work and was like, oh no, this is great. I was like, really? Is it all right? And it was like, well, if she's an editor and she's saying that, so then that was that really helped me on my journey. So
that's amazing. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
I think this is going to be so useful, and hopefully you're going to see loads more copies of Brightstorm.
I hope so.
Flying off the shelves.
And anyone can keep in touch with me. You can find me on social media, and I, if people in their classes are using my books or have got children that loves it, just honestly, just send me a little message and say, hi, Bobby in my class really enjoyed Brightstorm, and I'm always happy to send a little message back if it helps.
That's excellent. Thank you. And you're on Twitter, and obviously we'll put all your links to your website and everything in the show notes for the podcast.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for chatting. It's been lovely.
Thank you.